after the longest wait. It's finally here. I'm talking about it. Scream 6, one of my most anticipated movies of the entire year. If you haven't noticed, I've reviewed all 5 of the other films, and you can check those out in a playlist I'll link somewhere around here. And like I said before, I'm going to be splitting my content for Scream 6 into 2 videos. This being the normal review, and then I'm going to do a spoiler talk, because at this point, I could do one video since it's been such a long time, and I assume that a lot of you that had an interest in this film have already seen the film. But with the thoughts I have for each of them, it's just better at this point to keep them separate, not have some weird overlap or have a video that's too long. So I'm still holding to that original plan that I had. This review is going to be spoiler free. If you haven't seen Scream 6, you can watch this and it's very safe. I'm not going to get into the amazing stuff that happens that I'm so excited to talk about in that other video. Scream 6 picks up after the Woodsboro requel killings of 2022. The survivors, including Sam and her sister Tara, have moved to New York City in an attempt to resume their lives. But in usual Scream fashion, this transitional period is interrupted by the appearance of Ghostface. It's no mystery to you guys. I've said this so much. I was so excited to see this film. It's actually my favorite horror franchise. It's official. It is my favorite. I used to think that Scream and Alien were tied for my favorite horror franchise, but having seen all these films, having fresh takes for them, Alien's good. It has those first 2 great films, and it'll probably still be one of my favorite horror franchises because of Alien and Aliens, but it's not even close. It's not Scream. It's never going to be Scream. Scream is the GOAT. I was so into having just a fresh experience with this film that I switched to another YouTube account whenever I was doing just personal viewing, just for entertainment, because I wanted to avoid other opinions. I just wanted to go in as blind as possible and just form my own thoughts. And the same goes for spoilers, which when I was editing my review for Scream 4, I was already seeing like people posting footage of the movie and, having captions like, heavy spoilers or something and like final jump scare or something. So I knew that when I had to grab the footage that I wanted to use for Scream 2022, I didn't really want to use YouTube, so what I did is that I actually did the free trial of Paramount Plus to just do screen recordings of specific scenes that I wanted, which is how I've collected footage in the past before, just doing screen recordings. It was definitely more work, but I preferred doing more work instead of learning something that I would obviously regret. All that to say, all that huge intro to say that I was so glad that I went in as blind as I could, because I was not at all disappointed by Scream 6. For one thing, it lives up to the promise that the ending of Scream 2022 gave, and that is the continuation of Sam's storyline. And it's greatly expanded in this film, where you get to see more of the ramifications of her backstory with being the daughter of Billy Loomis, and how now looking at what does the public think of her. And it's all played out with this dark, serious tone that I wanted this film to have, that this character deserves. And going back to something that I said in my review of Scream 2022, an idea I had for her storyline, something that would add more complexity to one of these sequels, they actually took the skeleton of that idea, but they actually made something that made more sense. That actually made more sense than the fan fiction I had come up with. And again, I can't go into too specific detail of what exactly I mean by all that, and I'll definitely get into it with spoilers for sure. Besides that, her relationship with other characters, especially her sister Tara, that dynamic is expanded. The interaction, the conflict that these 2 characters have in this film is a very logical continuation of where their characters would be after the events of Scream 2022. And it's through that dynamic between these two characters that you get this really great arc for Sam to go on in this film. That for as much as Scream is always going to be known for being meta, for just being self-aware horror films, there are still moments where these films have important things to say about humans, about human relations. But of course, what adds to that is that both Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega once again give great performances, and actually maybe they give better performances than what they gave in 2022. Like, they might have actually improved. And then you have the other survivors of this film, and all these characters combined, they kind of form a family. What starts out as, like I said, typical Scream, cheesy, meta stuff, it actually ends up being more heartfelt towards, like, the ending of this film. Like, I was kind of surprised. What I really love about Scream 2022 and Scream 6 is that they just really cracked the code of how to make a Scream film without having to rely on Sidney, without having to rely on legacy characters, having these new people that we're really attached to by this point. What makes it even better is that despite having these characters that you love, this film, it doesn't make them feel like they have plot armor. This film lets you know early on that it has stakes. It has balls. There are certain points in this film where I was actually scared that some of these characters that I loved were gonna die. It's this boldness that these directors introduced back in 2022, and it really continues here, especially in the opening scene, which, as I watched the opening scene, I just figured that, because I didn't know what the reception with this film was, I just kind of imagined that, okay, if this film ends up being divisive, that opening scene is going to be part of the reason why. I loved that opening scene. I can't wait to talk about it in more detail in the next video. But it was a bold move, and I really respected that out of these guys. But these directors are also great at shooting scenes. Like in this film, you have a sequence in a convenience store that was shown in the trailer, and it's just exactly what I thought it would be. It's really cool. It's one of the standout moments of the film. Quite a bit of tension, and it just adds to that. In a way, these filmmakers are almost doing for Scream what Matt Reeves did for Batman. They're just adding all these shots and sequences in these films that I feel are destined to be iconic. That and their use of Ghostface, which before I even went online, I had this opinion, but having went online and seeing that a lot of people actually agreed with me, I was so happy that this film actually has my favorite Ghostface mask. And what I love about it is that it's dirty, it's grimy, it looks lived in. And it's the same thing with Michael Myers, with the Halloween 2018 mask, that there's just a quality that I like, and what a lot of other people like, to just having things age. Ghostface's mask just kind of added to the grittiness of this film. But to top it all off, this film has my favorite Ghostface reveal since Jill. And Jill is my favorite Ghostface reveal. And I wouldn't even be comfortable saying that this reveal tops Billy Loomis, because Billy is the GOAT. Like, that was just so iconic. But the Ghostface reveal in this one, it was very unique. Not only was it unique and kind of unexpected, but it also has something important to say about people's relationships with each other. I'll leave it there. I don't want to get into it too much and, say too much, but it had more substance than I thought it would. Definitely had more substance than Amber and Richie from Scream 2022. But just in general, like, these writers, they just kind of nailed the whodunit. I don't know if it's me just kind of being stupid when I'm watching these films, or if it's actually great writing, but I just didn't see certain things coming. And thinking back on the movie, I should have. but it was just written in a way that showing you certain things that you think are important and you focus on that, making you forget about other stuff that's going to be important later. I guess it is great writing. But just in the end, this film didn't disappoint me, but I had a few flaws here and there. Mostly nitpicks, and I could see some of these disappearing when I rewatched the film, and I just loved the film even more after that. But I would say that there's a character that's used in this film that's not used too much, but their writing is a bit pointless. To the point where they actually kind of leave the storyline of the film at a certain point, and I wasn't exactly sure what happened to them. And I actually had to look online to get the answer. For some odd reason, the film it just wasn't clear with that, and it was weird. And it did it to us to an even smaller character in the film as well. Just something I thought was odd, that it just kind of left these characters in one position and then just kind of said, okay, let's move on to this other thing. Hey, what happened to these other... No, we're moving on. It was kind of strange. All this is getting more into what I'm saying about the nitpick territory. And I would say that outside the opening, the ending, and one scene in the middle, the Ghostface sequences are still cool, but there's nothing that really comes close to, say, the hospital scene in the previous film, or even the opening scene where Tara gets attacked. And the reason I say it's nitpicking is because it's just since I saw Scream 2022 for the first time, I've just grown to really love that film. And scenes in that film have just become so iconic to me as just, that is a Scream scene. Maybe the more I watch this film, the same thing will happen. But at this point, this film, except for a few scenes here and there, for sure, it didn't have anything that quite matched certain scenes of Scream 2022 as far as the tension. And that also goes into the meta, where I feel like nothing matched the living room requel discussion. And as I was watching this film, I felt, okay, this film isn't quite as fresh as 2022 was. It isn't peak requel. And last thing on here, which is very small, it doesn't really count for anything, but it's something I noticed, and it's kind of worth mentioning. I felt like the city aspect of the film, which was something that was really interesting, taking Scream outside of the usual small town setting and having it take place in huge New York City. And they utilized some of that with using sequences inside a subway and certain moments where characters are running around a street. But with that space being so open, there's a lot that can happen. There's so many crazy ideas you could do with that. And this film only scratches the surface of that, which is okay. I wish they could have done a bit more with utilizing more of this open space of a city, but it wasn't huge. It's not something by the end I really cared too much about. Maybe it can be something for Scream 7 to incorporate more into its story. But again, this stuff, it's probably going to disappear in a rewatch. I am going to rewatch this film before my bested 2023. But in the end, I'm just glad to say that this film that was in my top 5 anticipated in 2023 is now in my top 3 films of the year. I'm going to give Scream 6 an A-. Stay tuned for my spoiler talk, which I've actually thought about this, and I wanted to release it sooner. I wanted to release it when the film came out. But actually, the huge gap in time since Scream 6 originally came out back in March till now, I think that gap might have helped. Just helped me marinate more on this film. And to my surprise, I've just taken more out of certain scenes that I want to talk about in more detail, that I think I might actually pull off a better video than it might have been before. But I guess we'll find out, won't we? If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell to get that notification for the Scream 6 spoiler review, and I'll see you guys then.